as I said earlier, they had the momentum second half and fully capitalized on it, and arguably could have done more. And we could have been sitting here discussing a reverse instead of a somewhat fortuitous 4-3 victory. From a neutral standpoint, what a cracking game of football.
Yeah,
but
it
from
really
a
was.
Spurs
Very entertaining.
Standpoint, it was very Spursy.
Yeah, you can't relax. You can't relax. And I had a number of people tell me I had a number of people tell me on Twitter this week, it's Spurs. You're never going to be able to relax. You just got to accept that. And I have. I understand.
So but there are some silver linings in this. I spent a fair bit of time on Twitter today. We've scored since the beginning of the year 26 goals, more than any other club in the Premier League. Arsenal have 24 since the 1st of January, and then we all know who's chipped in more than half of that with his 14. Yep. So that's the plus thing. The other thing I noted, I think I put it up on Twitter on Saturday, only Newcastle outside of the bottom three have shipped in more goals than us. So the point of our match discussion is the fact that the defence is very, very wobbly right now. And somebody noted, well, we weren't so bad when it was Fazio and Vertonghen, and that is kind of accurate. So I don't know what he has done to fall out of grace recently, and what Dyer has necessarily done to put himself in there, unless he is subscribing to Poch's way and Faz isn't. We'll never know that, but it's a safe assumption that we can make. And before we leave this, the other thing I found today was somebody out there in Journo land had made a comparison to Ozzy Ardiles, and they said if Poch doesn't change, he runs the risk of being another Ozzy Ardiles, which I think is probably a little unfair. But the comparison has already been made. Take out the fact that they're both from Argentina, but they are friends, and Ozzy does come and give him some advice, and they have conversations. But God forbid if suddenly we move for the next famous five, because we're not always going to be able to score 4 if one team scores 3. We proved that last week against United, and we certainly don't want to go back to those days. Entertaining, attacking football for the neutral, yeah, but for a Spurs fan, I don't think we want to see a repeat of those days.
Yeah, and I think even Brad had mentioned that there's a lot of people that kind of buy into, I'd rather us maybe lose a game 4-3, but look real pretty doing it rather than win a game 1-0. And he said that is absolutely, at least in his mind, he's got all his managing badges now. He helps these kids out a lot. He says if I'm the manager, I don't mind winning a game 1-0 and not have it be the most entertaining thing on the planet.
I love that he said that.
Yeah. So listen, there's a lot of things that the common fan, to the reporter who just wants to sell a paper, to maybe someone who actually works for the club. They have different ideas about what they're seeing on the pitch, and a lot of things get said on Twitter by, a lot of really unintelligent people. I'm not talking Spurs fans. I'm just talking the stuff you see on Twitter, period. I am on every football site you can imagine. There has to be a semblance of understanding. And to get back to Simon's point a little bit, listen, one of the knocks on Poch was that there was no plan B. The system will work if it's implemented properly, not just by the coaching staff and set up properly for that week, but it has to be executed by the players properly. And if it's not, you're going to end up 4-3 shootouts, and you don't know what side you're going to end up on. I mean,
yeah, but sorry.
Go ahead, Sam. No, I'm done.
Well, I was going to ask you this though, but let's take a quick step back. Were you surprised by that lineup? Did you feel like it was a stubborn lineup, or did you feel like?
Yeah, I did. You know what? Because listen, it's no big secret. I think Eriksen's been poor since the North London derby. I was expecting him to get a seat.
Really?
With the international break coming up, yes, really. With the international break coming up, let him get a break, because he's not looked good. He hasn't scored. since the Derby or before, and he's not really chipped in with any. People slate certain players on the club because they're weak, they're getting knocked off the ball. Eriksson gets knocked off the ball more than anybody on that squad. Period, without a doubt. And I think that Chadley's not been great the last couple. Listen, he missed 2 sitters, and I'm not saying that's why he should have sat. I was honestly expecting to see Dembele in the middle with Stambouli instead of Mason.
Really?
Yes, that's what I was expecting to see going into the international break. You've got a bunch of players sitting there that, listen, they're good enough to play them, and give these kids a break that have been running their asses off for the better part of 8 months now.
Chairman, what about you?
2 weeks off.
What surprised you in that lineup? If you were Poch for a day, what would have been your starting 11? Anything different?
Well, I think we've mentioned that we've needed someone like Stambouli to kind of take over in the middle and give one of the youngsters a rest. We've been kind of one-dimensional somewhat in the last few weeks with that lineup, or pretty close to it. If it's not Townsend on the right, it's been Lamela, or Eriksson shifts out on the left.
Hasn't been Lamela in a while.
And Chadley's coming off the bench. So it's been pretty much the same lineup. He wasn't on for long, but he did a couple of things, including setting up the goal that eventually went in via Eriksson and Schlupp. But Paulinho didn't really do anything wrong when he came on. He had a couple of good moments.
He had the pass for the fourth goal.
Yeah.
He looked a bit awkward on the very beginning, looked a bit slow. But other than that, I mean, he made tackles, made good passes, kept the ball. For me, I thought that was a perfect opportunity to start Lamela. You had substituted Townsend in the last 2 games. We've talked openly about our poor wing play, our poor midfield play in particular. Never thought I would see Eriksson be taken out, although I did feel like that we missed Dembele, and when he came in the last match, I think he brought that sort of controlling influence in the second half of the United game. But yeah, I was surprised to see Townsend in there. That was probably my biggest surprise. Fitting Dembele in is a bit awkward, and Chadley is hopeful. You got the overhang of what obviously the tragic loss of his father, and maybe he'll pick up that pace. But the thing with Chadley is if he would have benched Chadley, I wouldn't have been brokenhearted, because we've said it all year long. He scored some important goals, but in terms of his overall play, in terms of consistency, he's not been. He's been a little bit better than Townsend.
Yeah, I mean, well, listen, I didn't even mention Lamela before because everybody knows I'm up his ass. I mean, come on. I got my Lamela pajamas on right now, and I'm about to go sleep on my Lamela pillow. But I didn't mention him because of that. Listen, it's not Townsend I would have sat. I would like to see Townsend on the left and Lamela on the right.
I do too. I do too. We've talked about just give Andros the least amount of things to think about. Run fast, cross with your left foot, right?
Well, and look at what he created against Swansea when he had that opportunity to just blister the ball upfield, and he found a little hole and then wonder goal. I mean, it was just a fantastic run that he made.
Hey, maybe talking about Townsend is a good segue into the fact that he's part of the England squad now, and there's four other Spurs players, all products of the. Are they all products of the academy?
Yeah,
to varying degrees. I guess they are.
Walker isn't.
Walker,
but he spent a lot of his career with us.
Yeah. So thoughts about having five Spurs players?
I've already told you guys this in a text. The way my luck is going lately, they'll all blow ACLs, and then that'll be the end of that.
Oh, shit.
I know. I'm just saying. Get it out there.
I think, I'd made a tweet earlier today that's a remarkable feat for us to have 5 players selected for the England squad when we didn't take one to Brazil less than a year ago. Even in recent times, we might have had 3 players, Defoe, Lennon, Walker, Then Townsend came into the frame, but Lennon was already out of it. So it's been a while since we've had that many players selected, and I think it is now the most from one club in the Premier League. And yeah, we've been certainly slated for the inclusion of Rose and Mason when it was just, obviously deserved call up for Harry Kane. But, Andros and Carl have been called up for a lot of games recently. Unfortunately, they were both injured last summer, so couldn't make it to the World Cup had they been selected. So I think we know full well that Rose and Mason have been drafted in because Luke Shaw pulled out yesterday, and is it Lallana went out?
Yeah.
So Mason's been selected for that. And are there other worthy players from other clubs that could have been drafted in their stead? Maybe, but Roy has been to the Lane an awful lot recently to watch Harry Kane, and he's obviously scouting the other English players because we played so many English players, probably more so than the average Premier League team in the top half of the table. I know a lot of the lower half of the league clubs employ a lot more English guys than the top half, and that's indicative of the problems that we have in this sport, that we're not giving enough English-bred players the opportunity to succeed. And obviously, we are at Spurs, and if that's the just reward for selecting them week in, week out, then more power to them. Now, realistically, who's going to play? Lithuania, that should be a walkover for England, but we know, just like Spurs, England can be very Spursy in delivering on the expectation. But I got to think, and I have to agree with Alan Shearer, he has to start Harry Kane. I mean, don't draft him into the squad just to have him enjoy the experience and then sit on the bench. That's just a complete waste of his time. Let him go out there and prove that he's got what it takes to.
And now Sturridge is pulled out too, right?
Well, that's what I've heard. Is that true?
Yeah, Sturridge injured himself, so he is withdrawn from the squad. So that has to make Kane the shoe-in. And if he employs Rooney in that deep lying role at the top of the midfield, I think that's a pretty good setup for Harry Kane.
Sturridge isn't hurt. He's scared.
Yeah.
Doesn't want to be unseated right there.
I think Shearer, I didn't see it, so I'm only reading what Shearer said, but he is banging the drum very loudly for Harry Kane, and I don't think I'm not sure if they ended up putting Spurs on first on Match of the Day, but he was making a comment to the editors because they said, well, he didn't exactly do anything spectacular. One was a tap-in, one was a deflection, one's a penalty. At which point Shearer said, but that's a hat-trick.
Right. Yeah.
So, in three different ways.
Yeah, it's like you're playing golf and you go eagle, birdie, and one went through the lake and rolled up on the green and went in.
You're hot, you can do anything to the ball and it's going to find its way in the back of the net, and I think England should capitalise on that. And maybe he doesn't play against Italy, or he comes on as a sub in the Italy game. That's where you probably want to start some other players. So maybe Townsend might get a run out in that game. I'm not sure about Rose or Mason though. They're there as cover. We know Shaw would not have started a game in either of those two fixtures. Lallana may have featured a lot heavier, but I think Lallana, in all fairness, is he's ahead of Mason in the selection pickings right now.
Let me ask you guys this real quick.
Yep.
And I want to pick both of your brains on it. I'm kind of looking at a lot of things that are going to be going on in the off season. They go to Australia straight away. 6 days after the season ends, they play that match down in Australia. Then isn't it the Euro qualifiers during the off season? And then he comes back and plays a full season again, and then the Euros start. This kid, he's 21, and I get it. I'm a little concerned about burnout if he's playing constantly and is not given any kind of a legitimate break from the game.
Well, I'll just say this. I thought about this today. He's got maybe 1 or 2 years where he can handle this kind of load, and this has to change. But I think right now, and I can't remember who this was on Twitter that said that. Well, I made a comment the other day on Twitter. He runs around in the 85th minute like it's the 5th, and he